Welcome to Buddha Unfiltered, where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets the reality of modern life. You're here because you're curious, open-minded, and ready to see the world a little deeper. Today, we're breaking down one of the most misunderstood topics in Eastern philosophy: why Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator God, and why so many people get this completely wrong. Before we begin, comment below with where you're listening from. It helps this community grow and shows just how many people around the world are seeking truth together. If you're new, please subscribe. This channel delivers Buddhist wisdom in a raw, honest, unfiltered way. Now take a breath, open your mind, and let's begin. Most people think they already know what Buddhism says about God. Some believe Buddhists are atheists. Others assume the Buddha himself is worshipped like a god. And many imagine Buddhism as another religion built around prayer, rituals, and divine protection. But none of that reflects the heart of Buddhism. And the reason this misunderstanding exists is simple. People approach Buddhism with a Western idea of God, a creator, a designer, a ruler, a cosmic judge, and they look for that figure in Buddha's teachings. And when they don't find it, they assume, oh, Buddhism doesn't believe in God. But the truth is far more complex. Because Buddhism does talk about gods. It acknowledges beings more powerful than humans. It describes heavenly realms. It describes cosmic orders beyond human imagination. So why doesn't Buddhism accept a creator? To understand that, we must start where the Buddha started. Not with the universe, but with the mind. Imagine this real-life example. A man named Daniel grows up being told, if something good happens to you, God has blessed you. If something bad happens, God is punishing you. Now imagine Daniel's wife gets sick. He loses his job. His life spirals into stress and anxiety. His first question isn't, what causes suffering? It's, why is God doing this to me? This mindset is completely natural in belief systems centered around a creator. But in Buddhism, the Buddha realized that this entire way of thinking, this blaming and crediting external forces, prevents people from understanding the true source of their suffering. So instead of asking, who created the world? The Buddha asked, why do humans suffer, even when they believe in gods? He wasn't trying to explain the universe. He was trying to help humans break free from fear, craving, confusion, and emotional pain. So when people asked him about a creator God, the Buddha stayed silent. Not because he didn't know, but because he saw that question leading nowhere. It's like asking, what color is silence? Interesting, but useless. The Buddha realized people were drowning in suffering right now, and debating creation myths only distracted them from solving it. This idea becomes clearer through one of Buddhism's most powerful stories, the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man is struck by a poisoned arrow. He collapses. He's in pain. He's dying. But instead of pulling the arrow out, he refuses treatment until his questions are answered. Who shot me? What village was he from? What was his social class? What kind of bow did he use? What kind of wood was it made from? What feathers were used in the arrow? And while he waits, he dies. This story is a mirror of modern life. People today get hit by poisoned arrows all the time. A breakup, a betrayal, a financial collapse, a panic attack, a sudden loss, and instead of healing, they spiral into, why would the universe do this to me? Why did God let this happen? Who is punishing me? Meanwhile, the suffering continues. The Buddha saw this pattern 2,600 years ago. He saw people trapped in questions that kept them from healing the mind. He wanted to remove the arrow, not argue about who carved it. And this brings us to the heart of Buddhism's stance. Buddhism doesn't teach a creator God, because a creator God is not necessary to explain the universe and does nothing to end suffering. Buddhism explains the universe through a law far more elegant and far more consistent than divine will. Dependent origination, the law of causes and conditions. Everything that exists arises because something caused it. Your thoughts, your emotions, your personality, your reaction to life, all are shaped by conditions. A moment of anger appears because of stress, memories, triggers, habits, and beliefs. A moment of joy appears because of meaning, connection, understanding, and presence. Nothing appears from nowhere. Nothing exists independently. Everything is connected in a chain of causes. And in a universe where everything arises from conditions, a single creator becomes unnecessary. But here's where people misunderstand Buddhism most. Buddhism is not anti-God. Buddhism is anti-illusion. In fact, Buddhism acknowledges gods, many of them, but none of them are creators. None of them are eternal. None of them are all-powerful. And none of them can save you. A god in Buddhism is simply a being, living a long, blissful existence in a higher realm, but still trapped in the cycle of rebirth. Even gods die. Even gods suffer eventually. Even gods are subject to karma. This is illustrated in one of Buddhism's boldest stories, the story of Brahma, the god who believed he created the universe. One day, Brahma appears in a heavenly realm, alone, not remembering anything prior. He assumes, I am the creator. I am the first. I made everything. When other beings appear, they don't remember their past lives either, so they believe him. Until the Buddha arrives. Brahma declares proudly, I am the creator. The Buddha replies, you are mistaken. You were simply the first to appear here after the last cosmic cycle ended. You forgot your past, and so did they. Even gods can be wrong. Even gods can be misled by illusion. For Buddhism, this is the point. Do not accept a belief simply because it feels comforting. Seek clarity. Seek truth. Seek understanding. Now, let's bring this to real life. Imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah loses her job and immediately thinks, why is God punishing me? What did I do wrong? But then she learns Buddhist psychology. She begins to see the conditions that shape the moment. Economic shifts, company decisions, market forces, her own choices, timing, and the reality of impermanence. She realizes not everything is about her, and not everything is directed at her by some cosmic being. Instead of seeing punishment, she sees reality, and reality is easier to work with than fear. This shift from, why is God doing this to me, to, what conditions created this moment, is profoundly healing. It gives you agency. It gives you clarity. It gives you responsibility. And responsibility is freedom. But the real depth of Buddhism becomes clear when we reach the concept of the self. Because one of the Buddha's most radical teachings is this: there is no fixed, permanent, unchanging self. The self is not a solid object. It is a process, moment after moment after moment, a flowing river of thoughts, emotions, memories, habits, and sensations. This is where Buddhism becomes truly revolutionary. A creator becomes unnecessary when there is no permanent soul to create. Life is not designed. Life is arising continuously. To make this relatable, consider this. Think about who you were at age 14. Now think about who you are today. Your memories changed. Your beliefs changed. Your fears changed. Your desires changed. Your personality changed. So what exactly would a creator be creating? Which version of you? The child? The teenager? The adult? The future person you haven't become yet? When there is no fixed self, a designer becomes irrelevant. You are not created. You are evolving. This brings us to the concept of emptiness. Not emptiness as nothing, but emptiness as interdependence. A flower is empty of independent existence because it depends on soil, sunlight, water, and time. A flame is empty because it depends on fuel, air, and heat. You are empty because you depend on your parents, your memories, your biology, your choices, your experiences. Even gods are empty because they depend on past karma. Everything is interconnected. Nothing stands alone. Nothing exists independently long enough to be created. At this point, it becomes natural to ask, if there's no creator, and no permanent self, and everything is empty of independent existence, then what can we rely on? The Buddha's answer is simple: awareness. Awareness is the one thing that doesn't collapse under questioning. It is the one thing you can't argue away. Your experiences change. Your emotions change. Your body changes. Your identity changes. But the awareness that knows those things, that remains, it doesn't need a creator. It doesn't need a myth. It doesn't need belief. It needs clarity. It needs presence. It needs understanding. Here's a deeper story that ties everything together. A young man once approached a monk and said, "I feel empty. Nothing in life makes sense. I don't know what I'm supposed to believe." The monk took him to a river. "Put your hand in the water," the monk said. The young man did. The monk asked, "What do you feel?" "I feel the current pulling my hand," he said. The monk replied, "That is the universe. No creator pushes it. No judge directs it. It flows because conditions create flow." Then the monk said, "Now watch your thoughts the same way." And the young man realized his thoughts flowed too, without a creator, without a beginning, without a designer. Just causes, conditions, habits, memories, and awareness watching over all of it. The monk said, "You don't need to believe in a creator to feel supported. The universe supports you by laws, not by preference." And suddenly the young man felt peace, not because he found an answer to creation, but because he understood himself. This brings us to the final, most important question. So, does Buddhism believe in God? The most accurate answer is this: it depends on what you mean by God. If you mean a creator, Buddhism says no. If you mean divine beings, Buddhism says yes, but they are not ultimate. If you mean a universal essence, the closest thing in Buddhism is awareness itself. But if you mean someone to depend on, someone to blame or praise, someone who takes responsibility for your life, Buddhism says, look within, because the divine you seek is not above you, it is within your own awareness. Awakening is not something granted from outside, it is something realized inside. Welcome back to Buddha Unfiltered. If you're here for part 2, that already tells me something about you. You're not someone who settles for surface-level answers. You're a seeker, someone who wants clarity, truth, and a deeper understanding of life. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do, because the next few videos are going to explore the questions most people are too scared to ask. What happens after death in Buddhism? Is karma instant or delayed? How can you detach without becoming numb or cold? What is the Buddhist concept of hell? Can you be spiritual without believing in God? If that speaks to you, hit subscribe, and let's continue this journey. Take a breath, drop into this moment, and let's begin part 2. Part 2. The deep structure of reality. The Buddhist cosmos without a creator. Most people think that because Buddhism doesn't have a creator God, it must be a simple or empty worldview. The opposite is true. Buddhism has one of the most complex, multi-layered, detailed cosmologies of any spiritual tradition in the world. 31 realms of existence, millions of beings, cycles of rebirth stretching across unimaginable stretches of time, entire cosmic ages rising and collapsing like breaths of the universe. But none of it, not one single realm, requires a creator. Everything arises through conditions. Let's break this down in a way that's clear and relatable. The 31 realms, what they really mean. Buddhism teaches that life can unfold in 31 different states or realms. These include hell realms, hungry ghost realms, animal realms, human realm, jealous god realms, godlike heavenly realms, higher meditative realms, formless realms so subtle they cannot be imagined. But here's the part most people miss. These realms are not locations. They're states of mind, manifest as states of existence. Let's bring this into real life. The hell realm psychological version. A person consumed by rage, hatred, addiction, jealousy, or self-loathing is already living in a psychological hell. You don't need fire and demons to understand suffering. You only need a mind in torment. The hungry ghost realm psychological version. A person who never feels satisfied, who overeats, overspends, overdrinks, overworks, is living the hungry ghost state. A life of craving without fulfillment. The God realm psychological version. A person with wealth, comfort, beauty, status, who never struggles, may feel like they live in a heavenly realm. But in Buddhism, this is not a blessing. It's a distraction. Because pleasure can blind you to truth just as much as suffering can. The human realm, the sweet spot. Buddhism teaches something profound. The human realm is the best place for awakening. Not because we're superior, but because we suffer enough to stay motivated, and we experience enough joy to stay balanced. This balance is rare, and it's powerful. The law that replaces God. Karma. People often ask, if there's no creator, then what controls morality? Buddhism answers with something far more consistent than divine judgment. Karma, the natural law of cause and effect. But let me give you a real-life example, so it's not just philosophy. Real example. The workplace. Imagine two co-workers, Alex and Jordan. Alex constantly lies, manipulates, and undermines others. Jordan works with honesty, clarity, and respect. Now here's the key. You don't need a God to punish Alex or reward Jordan. Alex's dishonesty creates distrust. Distrust creates isolation. Isolation creates anxiety and paranoia. Eventually, Alex collapses under the weight of his own behavior. Jordan's honesty creates trust. Trust creates support. Support creates opportunity. This is karma, not cosmic punishment, not divine reward, just consequences. As predictable as gravity. The real reason Buddhism doesn't teach a creator. At this point, we can answer the question at a deeper level. Buddhism doesn't teach a creator because a creator is unnecessary. Here's why. If the self is not fixed, and the mind changes constantly, and everything exists due to conditions, and karma explains moral cause and effect, and reality unfolds without beginning or end, then adding a creator God adds nothing. It doesn't enhance understanding. It doesn't explain suffering. It doesn't help you awaken. Instead, Buddhism puts the responsibility and the power back where it belongs. On you. The Illusion of Self, Part 2. In Part 1, we introduced the idea that the self is not a permanent entity. Now let's deepen it. Have you ever noticed how much of your identity is built from things you never chose? Your language, your race, your beliefs, your fears, your preferences, your childhood conditioning, your emotional triggers. All of these were formed through conditions. You didn't choose to be hurt at age 8, but that event shaped the adult version of you. You didn't choose your earliest beliefs. They were handed to you. In Buddhism, this is called the conditioned self. And when the self is conditioned, there is nothing fixed to create. There is only a process unfolding, moment by moment, just like a flame, just like a wave, just like a thought. Real story. The woman who discovered she was not her trauma. A woman named Maya grew up with abuse. She spent her entire adult life saying, "I am broken. I am damaged." Then she began studying Buddhist psychology. She learned that she wasn't broken, she was conditioned. Her pain had causes. Her fear had origins. Her reactions had explanations. When she saw this clearly, something shifted. She realized, I am not my trauma. I am the awareness that sees the trauma. This is the heart of awakening. Not believing in something, not worshiping someone, but seeing clearly why Buddhism's view of God is actually more spiritual. Now here's the secret no one talks about. Buddhism's view of reality is not less spiritual, it is more spiritual. Because it doesn't limit the universe to a single being or a single will. Instead, Buddhism reveals a universe that is alive with consciousness, causes, conditions, rebirth, transformation, and endless potential. It doesn't put the divine out there. It shows that the divine is found in awareness, wisdom, compassion, clarity, and awakening. You don't need to believe in God to feel awe, to feel connection. To feel meaning, to feel transcendence, you only need to understand your mind. Closing reflection, part 2. So where does all of this leave us? Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator God because creation is unnecessary. The self is not fixed. Existence has no beginning. Everything arises through conditions. Karma explains morality. Suffering is solved internally. Awareness is the path. Liberation is personal. Wisdom is experiential, not revealed. Buddhism is not anti-God. Buddhism is beyond God. It replaces belief with understanding. It replaces obedience with clarity. It replaces divine authority with personal awakening. If part 2 opened your mind, comment below with the word clarity. Welcome to part 3 of this Buddha Unfiltered series. Now that we've explored the Buddhist rejection of a creator God, the next question naturally arises. If no divine being designed the universe, then what controls everything? What keeps the world functioning? What guides morality, order, and consequences? This is where Buddhism offers one of the clearest, most powerful answers in all of world philosophy. Let's break it down. The Western assumption that creates confusion. Many people assume, if nobody created the universe, then everything must be random, is belled. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. The universe is not random. The universe is not chaotic. The universe is not meaningless. It is governed by natural law, not divine command. Just like gravity doesn't need a god of gravity, and fire doesn't need a god of fire. Buddhism teaches that reality follows its own consistent principles. These include impermanence, karma, cause and effect, dependent origination, interdependence, mind conditioning. Nothing happens because someone wanted it to. Things happen because conditions create outcomes. Real-life example. The train of decisions. Imagine a man named Eric. Eric believes, God keeps putting obstacles in my life. But if you look closer, he wakes up late. He eats poorly. He rushes to work. He forgets deadlines. He loses focus. He reacts with anger. He blames others. His suffering doesn't come from a divine plan. It comes from his conditions. Just like a train follows its tracks, your mind follows the conditions you set. In Buddhism, your life is not controlled by a divine being. It's controlled by the causes you create. The law that replaces God in Buddhism, karma. Time to correct the biggest misunderstanding. Karma is not supernatural. Karma is not divine punishment or reward. Karma is not instant justice. Karma simply means your actions, words, and intentions create future conditions. If you plant tomatoes, you get tomatoes. If you plant anger, you get conflict. If you plant clarity, you get peace. No God is needed to enforce anything. The outcome is naturally built into the cause. Just like eating unhealthy causes health problems, being dishonest causes mistrust, being compassionate creates connection. Karma is not mystical. Karma is predictable. Real story. The manager who always thought someone was against him, a man named Thomas, always said, "Someone's sabotaging me. God must be testing me." But behind the scenes, he ignored emails. He didn't communicate. He was rude to staff. He took feedback personally. He made decisions out of fear. His suffering didn't fall from the sky. It grew from the seeds he planted. This is karma, not judgment, not punishment, just consequences. So why does this mean Buddhism doesn't need a creator? Because Buddhism explains everything through law, not a lawgiver; causes, not a creator; conditions, not commandments; awareness, not authority. Nothing requires a divine origin. The universe unfolds because that's what conditioned processes do. There's no designer needed because there's no fixed design, only continuous change. Closing reflection, part 3. Once you see how conditions shape life, the idea of an external controller becomes unnecessary. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What action, habit, or mindset led me here?" This is the core Buddhist idea. You are not being judged by a god. You are experiencing the momentum of your life, and momentum can be changed. Comment, momentum, if part 3 made sense. Part 4 goes even deeper. If part 4. If Buddhism doesn't believe in God, why does it talk about gods? Purpose. Explain Devas and Brahma clearly. Welcome to part 4. Now we're addressing one of the biggest sources of confusion. If Buddhism rejects a creator, why do Buddhist texts mention gods at all? Let's clarify this in the simplest way possible. Buddhism has gods, but not the God. Buddhism acknowledges many powerful beings. Devas, Brahmas, celestial beings, heavenly beings, higher dimensional intelligences. But here is what makes Buddhism different. Not one of them is a creator. Not one of them is all-powerful. Not one of them is eternal. Not one of them controls human fate. They don't fit the Western definition of God. In Buddhism, these beings are simply more advanced life forms trapped in the same cycle as humans. They live longer, feel more pleasure, and have more abilities. But they still die, still suffer, still experience karma. Real life. Parallel. The billionaire example. Think of a billionaire. From the outside, their life looks godlike. Freedom, comfort, influence, power. But they can suffer. They can be depressed. They can be lonely. They can make mistakes. They can die. They're not above humanity. They just have different conditions. Buddhist gods are the same. Elevated beings, not ultimate beings. The Brahma story. The god who thought he created the universe. One day, the Buddha visited a realm inhabited by Brahma, a powerful deity who believed he was the creator of the universe. Why? Because he appeared alone at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, and other beings arrived after him. They looked to him for answers, and he believed his own story. But when the Buddha arrived, he explained, "You were simply the first to appear here. Your belief in being the creator arises from confusion." This story is central to understanding Buddhism. Even gods can misunderstand reality. Even gods can suffer from ignorance. Even gods are not creators. This is why Buddhism rejects the concept, not because gods don't exist, but because none of them match the role of creator. So why does Buddhism include gods at all? Because Buddhism is honest about the universe. There are many types of beings, many dimensions, many realms of existence, but none of them created reality. None of them control your fate. None of them can give you liberation. Awakening comes from understanding the mind, not worshiping a deity. In Buddhism, even gods are stuck in samsara. Even gods need wisdom. Even gods need awakening. Real example, the celebrity effect. People idolize celebrities the way ancient people idolize gods. But their fame doesn't make them wise. Their success doesn't make them enlightened. Their followers don't make them creators. They're just humans with different conditions. Buddhist gods are similar. High status, high pleasure, zero ultimate power. They are part of the system, not the designer of the system. Closing reflection part 4. So here is the truth. Buddhism is not atheistic. Buddhism is not theistic. Buddhism is non-theistic. It acknowledges divine beings, but rejects the idea of an ultimate creator. Not out of rebellion, not out of denial, but because the nature of reality doesn't require one. In Buddhism, everything arises from conditions. Everything changes. Everything is impermanent. Everything is interdependent. No being stands above this law, not even gods. If part 4 clarified this for you, comment, clarity gained. Part 5. If Buddhism rejects a creator, then how did everything begin? Addresses the origin of the universe from a Buddhist view without drifting off topic. Welcome to part 5. At this stage in the series, most people naturally ask, if Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator God, then how did everything start? Where did the universe come from? This is one of the most profound questions in human history, and Buddhism answers it in a way unlike any other tradition. Let's break it down. The Buddha's surprising answer. The beginning is not knowable. When people ask the Buddha, who created the universe? What started everything? What was the first cause? He responded with something modern physics now mirrors. The beginning cannot be found, not because the Buddha didn't know, but because the very question misunderstands the nature of reality. Buddhism teaches existence has no beginning. Cycles rise and collapse endlessly. Universes expand and dissolve. Time moves in vast loops, not a straight line. There is no first moment that needs a creator. Everything is beginningless. This is the key difference between Buddhism and creator-based religions. Buddhism does not ask, what started everything? It asks, what sustains everything? And the answer is, causes and conditions. The chicken and the egg question. People often ask, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Science shows us. Eggs existed before chickens. Chickens evolved from earlier birds. Earlier birds came from reptile ancestors. Reptiles came from fish. Fish came from single-celled organisms. Those came from earlier life, and so on. At no point do we find an absolute beginning, just earlier conditions. The Buddha saw the universe the exact same way, only more deeply. Everything arises from previous conditions. Everything is part of an endless flow. Everything is connected. No divine spark needed. The universe did not need a beginning, and still doesn't. Modern physics now points toward no beginning, no edge, no absolute starting point, just expansion and contraction cycles. The Buddha taught this 2,600 years ago. Buddhism says the universe is beginningless because reality is a continuous process. Processes don't need creators. They only need conditions. It's the conclusion of Part 5. Buddhism doesn't replace God with randomness. It replaces God with continuity. No beginning, no first cause, no creator needed. Reality unfolds through an infinite chain of conditions. The same chain you experience within your own mind. If this expanded your understanding, comment, no beginning. Part 6 goes deeper into the ultimate truth behind Buddhism's rejection of a creator. Part 6, so what is ultimate reality in Buddhism, if not God? Explains the Buddhist ultimate truth that replaces the concept of God. Welcome to Part 6. Here we explore perhaps the most important question of all. If Buddhism doesn't believe in a creator God, then what is its ultimate truth? What takes the place of God? The answer is profound. Awareness, emptiness, interdependence, the nature of experience itself. Let's break it down clearly. The two levels of reality. Buddhism teaches two layers of truth. Conventional reality, the world we experience. Ultimate reality, the actual nature of existence. Most people live entirely in the first layer. Buddhism points us toward the second. What is that second layer? Ultimate reality, emptiness. Emptiness is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean nothing exists. It means nothing exists independently. Everything is conditional, dependent, interconnected, fluid, impermanent. A cup exists because of sand, heat, water, labor, technology, and thousands of years of human development. A person exists because of parents, society, biology, experience, education, trauma, culture, and time. Nothing stands alone, not even the universe. This is ultimate reality, and because everything is interdependent, there is no need for a creator, no space for an external designer, no room for a self-existing God. Creation is replaced with connection. Ultimate reality, awareness. Now for the second key insight. Everything you know, feel, think, or believe appears in awareness. This means God appears in awareness. Self appears in awareness. Reality appears in awareness. Beliefs appear in awareness. The universe appears in awareness. And yet, awareness itself has no form, no edges, no birth, no death, no creator, no location. Awareness is the one constant in all experience. This is why many advanced Buddhist schools say awareness is the closest thing Buddhism has to the divine. Not as a being, but as a fundamental nature. Not someone who created the universe, but the space in which the universe is known. Real life example. The sky and the clouds. Think of awareness as the sky. Thoughts are clouds. Beliefs are clouds. Emotions are clouds. Ideas of God are clouds. Ideas of self are clouds. Clouds come and go. The sky remains. Awareness remains. Awareness is not a God, but it is the ground of experience deeper than any belief. In why this replaces the need for a creator. Because Buddhism's ultimate truth is not a person. It's not a being. It's not a mind in the sky. It is the nature of existence, the nature of experience, the nature of awareness, the nature of interdependence, the nature of impermanence. These together form a complete explanation of reality that does not require a creator. This is what people misunderstand. Buddhism is not rejecting God out of denial. It simply doesn't need God as part of its explanation. Everything already fits without one. In closing reflection, part 6. So what is ultimate reality in Buddhism? Not a creator, not a judge, not a ruler, not a divine architect. Ultimate reality is the true nature of mind and the true nature of existence. The more you understand these, the less you need external explanations. And eventually, the question, does God exist, becomes less important than, what is the nature of awareness? What is the nature of my mind? What is the nature of suffering? What is the nature of liberation? If part 6 resonated, comment, awareness is the ground. In the final ending, the complete message of this series, you've reached the final part of this Buddha Unfiltered series. By now, you understand something most people never realize. Buddhism does not reject God out of atheism, and Buddhism does not accept God out of tradition. Instead, Buddhism asks a deeper question. What is real? What is the mind? What is suffering? What leads to liberation? And from those questions, the truth becomes clear. A creator is not required. A divine judge is not necessary. Ultimate reality is not a being. Awakening is not something granted to you. Liberation is not dependent on belief. In Buddhism, your freedom begins where illusion ends. Your awakening begins where clarity begins. Your power begins where responsibility begins. No creator controls your destiny. No divine plan determines your path. You shape your conditions. You create your karma. You transform your mind. You walk the path. And that is more powerful than any creator could ever make you. If you made it to the end, comment, I walk my own path. And make sure to subscribe. This is Buddha Unfiltered, where truth isn't polished, wisdom isn't watered down, and awakening isn't theoretical.